Well, hello, this is Bob Byrnes, Mayor of the City of Marshall.
Preston, Stensrud, Park and Recreation Superintendent for the City of Marshall.
So we're here to talk about emerald ash borer in the City of Marshall. We'll talk about several things. First off, we'll talk about the trees that are on city property, whether they're in parks or whether they're in right-of-way, and really what the city plans to do and is doing to manage the emerald ash borer and the ash tree population. Secondly, we'll talk about kind of what the situation is in the parks. And then thirdly, we'll make some general recommendations about what all of us homeowners can do if you have ash trees in your yard and the options that you have. First off, I think as most people know, last summer the emerald ash borer was detected in the City of Marshall. Since that time, it's really been found in numerous locations around the City of Marshall. Just as background, emerald ash borer is fatal to all species of ash, with the exception of mountain ash. And so all of our trees that are ash trees in the community are vulnerable, and there's some options that we have that we'll talk about in a second. But if we do nothing, they will all end up dying over time. It won't be immediate. It takes about 5 to 10 years probably, through some general decline until they actually die. So within the city, we have about 8,000 trees that are located in parks or on right-of-ways, like the boulevards on our streets and some of our city property around town. And of those, about 20% of those trees are ash. So with 8,000 total trees, 20%, about 2,000 ash trees that we have in the community. So in managing for that, and of course that percentage is probably a little bit lower in our parks because of some of the things that our Parks Department under the leadership of Preston has done. And maybe, Preston, you want to talk about our management within the parks?
Yeah, certainly. So it kind of started probably 10 to 12 years ago. We started really trying to diversify our species that we're planting to better prepare for the onset of emerald ash borer. We were hoping that we wouldn't find it like we did last year. We were hoping we had some more time. But back in 2021, we also received a grant from the DNR. So we removed 113 ash trees in our parks, and we planted 226 new ash trees as part of that grant, which really allowed our percentage.
Not new ash trees, other.
Oh yeah, sorry, new
trees.
Replaced ash trees. Sorry about that. Good correction. With that, it really helped lower our percentage overall of ash trees in the parks. Now we still have a lot of work to do. I think we're somewhere in that 750, 770 ash trees still in the parks, which will leave a big impact for shade and wind blockage and stuff like that in our green spaces. And then again, in the fall of 2023, we received another grant that'll help us more focus on some of the right-of-ways, removing ash trees, planting some new trees of varying species again. It'll also allow to have some reimbursement for getting some trees removed on private property. We're working on that program, and it won't be out likely till fall. And again, it's going to take a lot of time to phase out the ash trees and allow the new trees to grow, but definitely it'll be detrimental to our landscape and our tree canopy throughout Marshall.
So our situation this year, and we do have some concerns this year. We've enjoyed a warmer than normal winter. It's been nice, it's been comfortable. We haven't had a lot of cold weather. Unfortunately, that has also been good for the survivability of the larvae of the emerald ash borer. Both first and second year larvae have had a high survivability rate. Typically, when it's very cold in the winter, a percentage of them don't survive. This year, a higher percentage of them did survive, according to the DNR and University of Minnesota entomologists. And it also has been a fairly mild and early spring. And for that reason, the activity has come on earlier. So we would expect that this will be a more successful year for the activity of the emerald ash borer, which is not good for our ash trees. So maybe we'll talk just a little bit about some general recommendations for not only the city as we manage the ash tree population, but then also for homeowners that have ash trees on their property. There's really three choices. One is to do nothing, and then those trees are going to die. Secondly would be to treat those trees. And if you do choose to treat the trees, the treatment is highly effective. We would highly recommend that you work with a reliable licensed contractor, because these are restricted use products. It does take someone who is trained, knows what they're doing, but that is a good option. As we look at the trees that we have here, you can replace, but those are smaller trees, and that's really a generational type commitment to that. On the other hand, you can do the treatment, but you do need to be committed to doing that every 2 to 3 years for as long as you choose to continue that treatment. And then the third option would be to remove and replace, and that would be a recommendation if someone just wants to start over, someone has an ash tree that really isn't that desirable of a tree, or you don't like the location, remove that, replace that, and then replace that with a tree that shows some diversity, obviously not an ash tree, but some diversity of a tree species that will be appropriate for this area. And one area that we do recommend that people look at is along Saratoga Street, the bike trail on South Saratoga Street. A number of years ago, the city did, when that bike trail and street was reconstructed, we planted a number of different species. We put placards at the base of those so they can be identified, so people can look at those trees now that they're starting to grow. So there's some good examples there. Preston, you can talk about some of the examples, but one of those examples is elm, disease-resistant elms, and those are growing very well. There's some oak, there's some others, and you can talk about other recommendations that you would make.
Yeah, there's a lot of good choices. It really kind of depends on person's area and how big of a tree they're looking for. But yes, you kind of mentioned the elm, locust, hackberry, linden trees are kind of some of your bigger varieties that are doing well. We try and kind of avoid, we have kind of our second most populated tree would be the maples. So I tend to try and avoid those if possible. And then our soils are not always that great for maple trees long term. But there are a lot of options. A lot of people think, there's only 1 or 2 trees, but I think there's probably 10, 11 different varieties that would do well in Marshall. Some are slower growing, some are fast. So it really, again, depends on what they're really looking for. If they want some color, large shape, just lots of different things, but definitely lots of options.
So if homeowners, property owners, or people in the city really have questions on that, we would offer just a few final things. One is we are planning to do a educational training session for folks that can get a little extra training on both tree identification as well as identification of some pests, including emerald ash borer, and then they can be a resource in their neighborhood. That actually is a requirement of one of the grants that we received, is that we do have to have provide some training to 20 plus volunteers. So we will be offering that in the future. But in the meantime, if homeowners, if property owners, if people have questions on that, there are resources that are available. One of those resources is your local nurseries, and landscape experts are good resources. The license applicators for the treatment, in this case emerald ash borer treatment, the license applicator, the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, Minnesota DNR, have very good websites, as well as University of Minnesota Extension.
Yeah.
Any final comments?
No, I think the main thing is, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to. We'll gladly provide some input, or try and answer any questions that people might have, or those resources like you mentioned. There's tons and tons of information out there. So you kind of have some choices to make, and every tree is a little bit different situation. So it takes some planning and asking questions, and we're here to help.
So with that, we'd encourage everyone to enjoy Earth Day. Arbor Day is coming up. We'll enjoy our outdoor environment in the city of Marshall. Thank you.
Thank you.